if someone kept destroying your property every week, and the law turned a blind eye? What would you do? What does justice look like when the people causing the problem think they are the law? Every Monday morning, like clockwork, it happened. The crunch of tires, the snap of wood. And by the time I got to the porch, my mailbox was on the ground, and the HOA patrol SUV was disappearing down the road. The first time, I gave them the benefit of the doubt. The second, I started getting suspicious. By the fourth time, I knew. This wasn't an accident. This was a message. And the best part? They acted like nothing happened. Maybe the wind knocked it over, one of them said. On a day with no wind, no storms, just their smug smile and fresh tire marks leading away from the scene. These weren't police. These were self-appointed rule enforcers from the local HOA, patrolling the neighborhood like they were in charge of the whole county. My ranch sits just outside their border, but that didn't stop them from targeting me. Maybe they didn't like my fence. Maybe they didn't like my goats. Or maybe they just didn't like the fact that I didn't play along with their, fake authority. But if they wanted to keep running over my property, I was about to give them a mailbox they'd never forget. One hit, and they'd feel it in their bones. You won't believe what happened when they finally tried. You ever get the feeling someone's messing with you? On purpose, I did. Every Monday morning, for 3 months straight. It always started the same, the crunch of gravel, the sudden thud, and then silence. I'd step out onto my porch, coffee in hand, just in time to see the HOA patrol SUV vanish into a dust cloud. And my mailbox? Crushed again. The first time, I chalked it up to chance. The second time, maybe bad luck. By the fourth, I started filming. By the seventh, I stopped calling it a coincidence. I live just outside the borders of Willow Heights, an HOA-run community obsessed with rules, roses, and power trips. My ranch technically isn't under their control, but their volunteer patrols act like they own every inch of land they can see. And my classic wooden red-painted mailbox? Apparently, it offended their sterile suburban sensibilities. Maybe it was the little American flag I had on top. Maybe it was the fact I never showed up to their passive-aggressive bake sale meetings. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the only thing they could control on my land. Whatever the reason, they hit it, again and again, like clockwork. And every time, we don't know what happened. Must have been the wind, they'd say. On a dead calm day, no wind, just lies and tire marks. But I had a plan, a quiet one they'd never see coming. If they wanted to keep ramming my property, I'd give them a mailbox that hits back. I didn't move out here for trouble. I moved for peace. 5 acres, a red barn, 2 goats named Elvis and Priscilla, and nothing but open sky. My little ranch sat right at the edge of Willow Heights, a place where every lawn is cut to regulation height. Every flower bed is HOA approved, and every neighbor secretly hates the other. I wasn't part of it. Never signed their papers, never paid their dues. But the road in? Yeah, it cuts right past my property, and that made me their problem. It started small. Notes rubber-banded to my gate. Your fencing doesn't align with community aesthetic. Funny thing, my fence has stood longer than their HOA has existed. Then came the SUV, white, boxy, with a badge-looking logo that screamed, "Wannabe Cop." Inside, Bob, clipboard aviators. Authority complex the size of Texas. Word was he used to be mall security. Got fired for overstepping. Figures. He'd slow roll past my house, scribble things on his clipboard, sometimes just sit in his truck and stare like I was running a crime ring out of my barn. Then came the mailbox. My hand-carved cedar post, red paint, classic black box. Clean, sturdy, old school. One morning, it was split in half. I figured maybe a delivery truck clipped it, so I replaced it. Next week, same thing. But this time, I saw fresh tire tracks. I asked Bob. He said might have been the wind. Or maybe the FedEx guy. Our mailman drives a Prius. Doesn't even hit potholes. I started watching. 2 weeks later, I installed a trail cam. One of those wildlife ones meant for spotting coyotes. And what do I catch in 4K? The HOA SUV swerving just enough to clip the box. Not a mistake. Not even subtle. Intentional. I took the footage to the HOA office. A place that smells like lemon cleaner and judgment. The president, Karen with a capital K, didn't even look at the video. Just said, well, technically that mailbox isn't on HOA land. So, it's not our responsibility. Not your responsibility, but it's your car. Your patrol. Your people. They wanted control without consequence. They wanted to scare me off my own land with smiles and tire marks. That's when it clicked. This wasn't some misunderstanding. This was deliberate. This was personal. And if they wanted to play games, I could play a few too. That mailbox was just the beginning. After that footage, I thought they'd back off. I was wrong. Dead wrong. Instead, they escalated. Next week, I installed a heavy-duty steel post. Welded it myself. Buried it deep. Added reflectors. Even painted it red like the original. The next morning, it was bent. Not broken, but dented. And parked 20 feet up the road with a steaming radiator. The HOA SUV. Bob stood there like a cartoon villain with a bad poker face. "Man, someone keeps hitting your box," he said, grinning like it was funny. It wasn't even subtle anymore. They wanted me to know. They wanted to push me, and push they did. I started getting letters. Not emails, letters, hand-delivered by HOA volunteers, fines for visual obstruction, complaints that my goats were audibly disruptive, Elvis and Priscilla. Too harmless. Bleeding souls who mostly lay in the shade chewing grass. A week later, I caught Karen walking her dog along my fence, snapping photos of my property like she was building a case. She even brought a tape measure. Reached over the fence to measure my shrubs. That wasn't just nosy. That was trespassing. I called the county. Filed a complaint. The sheriff came by, wrote it down, said he'd keep an eye on things. Nothing happened. Then came the nails, actual roofing nails, scattered across my gravel driveway. I spotted them early one morning while taking the trash out. Picked up 27, missed one, my rear tire caught it 2 days later. Again, I reported it. Again, no charges, no proof, no accountability. That's when I knew this wasn't just vandalism. This was harassment, and the system wasn't going to help me. So I did what every fed-up rancher with a barn full of tools and no more patience does. I drew up a plan, not for revenge, for justice, and yeah, maybe a little payback too. I started sketching on a napkin. Something strong, subtle, deceptive. I took a weekend. Then another. Then one more. Welding, framing, layering. I built what looked like a normal mailbox, rustic red paint. Same shape, same flag, but inside. A fortress. Reinforced steel core. Concrete-filled post. Angled rebar in the base. And just for flair, I textured the outside to make it look like old weathered wood, harmless, innocent, like bait. I planted it 3 feet deep. Packed it in with gravel and epoxy, and smoothed the dirt around it. Then I waited. 1 day, 2, a week. Then, Monday morning, 7:13 a.m., the crunch. Louder than before. I knew that sound. But this time it wasn't my mailbox breaking. It was something else. Something metal. Something expensive. I walked out with my coffee in hand, slow and steady. And what I saw? It was almost poetic. The SUV was in the ditch. Front end cracked open like a dropped watermelon. Steam rising. Fluids leaking. My mailbox? Not even scratched. Bob stood outside the vehicle, arms flailing, staring at the wreck like gravity had betrayed him. I didn't say a word, just sipped my coffee and nodded. The sheriff showed up 20 minutes later. This time I was ready. I handed him a folder, thick, documented, time-stamped photos, footage of the SUV veering off course, screenshots of the fines, the goat complaints, the nail damage, the trespassing. He flipped through it slowly, like a man reading a novel he didn't expect to enjoy. Then he walked over to Bob and asked one simple question. "Why'd you drive off the road into a mailbox?" Bob said it was too close to the lane. I thought I could nudge it. Nudge it. He tried to nudge a post anchored in concrete, filled with steel. The sheriff looked back at me and raised an eyebrow. "You built that yourself?" "Sure did," I said. "It's within my property line, correct?" "More than legal," he said. "It's behind the county easement. You could plant a tree there if you wanted." Turns out Bob just confessed to property damage, not an accident, not plausible deniability, a statement. The HOA SUV was towed. Bob got cited. And the HOA? They tried to distance themselves fast. At the next meeting, Karen, yes, pearls and all, stood up and declared my mailbox a community hazard. But by then, the damage was done. Not to me, to them. Because while Karen was lobbying for mailboxes, the local news had picked up the story. Rancher builds mailbox that hits back. It went mildly viral. Neighbors who never talked to me started waving. One brought cookies. Another asked if I could help him reinforce his mailbox. And more than one whispered, "They've been doing this to all of us." The curtain was falling. The HOA's little empire of control, image, and quiet intimidation. Cracked, exposed. All I had to do was stand still and let them hit the wrong thing. A month later, the HOA board called an emergency meeting. Word had spread, not just about the crash, but about the file I'd handed the sheriff. Turns out, their insurance didn't cover intentional vehicle damage during unauthorized patrol activity. Translation? They were on the hook. Bob was officially removed from his volunteer position. The patrol program? Suspended indefinitely. And Karen, the Queen of Pearls, resigned for personal reasons. But the real victory wasn't in board reshuffles or legal threats. It was in the silence. For the first time in months, no SUV rolled past my driveway, no camera clicks, no angry letters about Elvis being too vocal during daylight hours. The same people who once tried to break me now had to drive past that mailbox every single day, a concrete monument to boundaries they could no longer cross. Neighbors started calling it the post. One even made a sticker. Don't poke the post. Someone else left a note in my mailbox. Thank you for standing up. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. At the next town meeting, I stood up and proposed a formal boundary restriction. No HOA patrols past the Willow Heights sign. It passed. Unanimously. Bob stormed out halfway through. Karen didn't show. The air felt different after that, lighter, like the land itself had exhaled. And that mailbox? Still standing, still spotless, not a scratch since. Because sometimes justice doesn't arrive in a courtroom. Sometimes it's just a man with a welder, a plan, and the patience to wait for Monday morning. They say a man's home is his castle. Mine just had a better mailbox. This wasn't about wood or steel or gravel. It was about principle, boundaries, the kind you don't paint or post signs for, but the kind you defend. I didn't want war with the HOA. I didn't start it, but I sure as hell finished it. All it took was patience, planning, and one mailbox they'd never forget. And you know what? I haven't had a single issue since. No patrols, no letters, no fake fines, just peace. And the occasional honk from a neighbor driving by with a thumbs up. So here's what I'll leave you with. If someone keeps pushing your boundaries, you don't need to yell, you don't need to fight. You just need to build something strong enough to stand. And sometimes the best revenge is a mailbox that hits harder than a lawsuit. What would you have done if someone kept crushing your mailbox? Drop it in the comments. And if you made it all the way to the end, come on, justice served, so I know you're one of the people who gets it. Until next time, take care of your property, trust your gut, and remember, you don't need a badge to draw the line.